Hey there, I'm Ella. I'm a nurse, been one for a good few years now, working my shifts at the city clinic. Not the most glamorous gig, but it pays the bills and I like helping folks. So, there I was, clipboard in hand, when this guy walks in. His name's Tom, and he's got his dad with him, an older gent who seemed a bit out of sorts. Tom looked all sorts of worried, his eyes scanning the busy waiting room like he was lost. Seeing him like that, I figured he needed a hand. "Hey, can I help you guys?" I called out as I approached them. Tom turned to me with a relieved look. "Oh, thank goodness. We're trying to find Dr. Lewis's office. Dad's got an appointment, and this place is a maze." I smiled, gesturing for them to follow. "You're not wrong there. Come on, I'll take you there." As we walked, his dad, who introduced himself as George, kept quiet, just shuffling along with us. Tom, on the other hand, chatted away. "Dad's been a bit under the weather, and we've been worried." "No worries, you've done the right thing bringing him in." "How long has he been feeling off?" I asked, trying to get a sense of how urgent the situation was. "A couple of weeks now. Just hasn't been himself, you know?" I nodded, understanding the anxiety that comes with seeing a parent unwell. "Yeah, I get that. It's tough. But you're doing a great job looking after him." Tom gave a half smile, clearly appreciating the support. "Thanks, Ella. I'm just trying to do my best." By then, we had reached the office, and I opened the door for them. "Here you go. Dr. Lewis will take good care of your dad." I waved goodbye and headed back to my station, feeling good about helping them out. Little did I know, that brief encounter would be just the beginning of something new for me. Tom's kind face and genuine concern for his dad stuck with me. It's not every day you meet someone who genuinely radiates kindness. Back at the nurse's station, my colleague Jess nudged me. "Looked like you just made a new friend." "Focus on your work, Jess," I teased, but I couldn't help the smile that lingered on my face as I thought about Tom's kind eyes and easy smile. It turned out, that wasn't the last I'd see of Tom. He'd pop in now and then, sometimes with his dad, sometimes with questions, or even just to say hi. Each visit, our chats got longer, laughter a bit louder, and I found myself looking forward to those unexpected moments. Months rolled by since that first help I gave Tom and his dad at the clinic. Who knew that a simple gesture would spark something that felt a bit like those cheesy romance tales? But here we were, Tom and I, finding excuses to meet up for coffee, turning those short visits into long evenings filled with chatter and laughter. One chilly evening, as we sat in our usual spot at the corner cafe, wrapped up in our warmest jackets, Tom's face got all serious, a look I wasn't used to. "Ella, there's something I've been wanting to ask you," he started, fiddling with his coffee cup. I raised an eyebrow, curious and a bit anxious. "I was wondering, what do you think about us, making this official? Like, actually dating?" I couldn't help but laugh, not at him, but at the sheer relief washing over me. "Tom, I thought you'd never ask. I'd like that, a lot." Tom's folks owned a small laundry business, something they were mighty proud of. It was their life's work, right next to their home. One Sunday, Tom invited me over for dinner to meet his parents, Nancy and George. The nerves hit me like a truck. Meeting the parents was a big deal, especially when your boyfriend had described his mom as particular and his dad as old school. The house was cozy, filled with the warm, soapy scent of freshly laundered clothes. Nancy was in the kitchen, bustling around with pots and pans, while George sat in the living room, newspaper in hand. "Mom, this is Ella," Tom introduced me as we stepped into the kitchen. Nancy eyed me up and down, a hard-to-read expression on her face. "Nice to meet you, Ella. Tom tells us you're a nurse?" "That's right, Mrs. Johnson. At the city clinic," I replied, offering a smile, hoping to break through her stern exterior. A nurse, eh? Must be tough, what with all the hours. Ever think about a more stable job?" Her tone wasn't exactly welcoming, more like she was sizing me up for something. I felt a sting at her words, but kept my cool. "I love what I do, Mrs. Johnson." It's rewarding, and I manage the hours just fine. Dinner was a mix of awkward silences and tough questions from Nancy. George mostly stayed quiet, occasionally throwing in a word or two, mostly about the laundry business. It was clear they were proud of their work, and they hinted more than once how they hoped Tom would take over soon. Ella, our laundry is a family business. Tom here has been a part of it since he was a boy. We'd love for him to run it full time. Maybe you could join him, make it a real family affair, George said, passing the mashed potatoes. Tom quickly jumped in, seeing my discomfort. Dad, Ella's got her career, and she's really good at it. We're just taking things as they come, right? I nodded, grateful for his support, but the message was clear. They wanted their son tied to home, and maybe they expected the same from me. As we left that night, Tom apologized for his mom's hard edge. She's protective, you know? But she'll come around, I hope. I squeezed his hand, unsure of what the future held but certain about one thing. I wasn't ready to give up my scrubs for a laundry apron, not for anyone. We decided on a small wedding, nothing fancy, just close friends and family. One crisp Saturday morning, as we planned our modest reception, Tom's phone rang. He looked at it, frowned, and stepped out to take the call. When he came back, his face was ashen. My dad, he's had a stroke. We need to go, now. The wedding plans got shoved to the back burner as we rushed to the hospital. The next few days were a blur of doctors, waiting rooms, and coffee that tasted like burnt tar. Tom was a wreck, and I did my best to support him, putting on a brave face while my heart ached for him. George didn't make it. The funeral was a week later, a somber affair with too many people saying how he was in a better place. I stood by Tom, holding his hand, feeling the weight of his grief. After the funeral, Nancy was a shadow of herself, quieter and more withdrawn. That's when Tom dropped the bombshell. Ella, I need to be there for my mom. She shouldn't be alone right now. I was thinking, maybe we should move in with her, just for a while, until she gets back on her feet. The idea of living with Nancy, in that house that felt more like a business than a home, made my stomach turn. But I saw the desperation in Tom's eyes, and I loved him, so I agreed. And yet, first of all, we went to the mayor's office and legitimized our relationship, without a lavish ceremony and a white dress. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. The move was hectic. Between packing up our stuff and trying to comfort a grieving mother-in-law, I barely had time to process my own feelings. Nancy wasn't exactly warm, it was her house, and she made sure we knew it. Ella, make sure those boxes go in the storage room. We need to keep the hallway clear, she instructed the day we moved our last suitcase in. Of course, Nancy. We'll handle it, I replied, trying to keep the peace. Life at Nancy's was tough. She had her ways of doing things, and didn't appreciate deviation. I tried to help, to fit into this new, uncomfortable routine, but everything I did seemed to bother her. Tom was caught between us, trying to mediate but mostly just sinking deeper into his own sadness. He spent long hours at the laundry, avoiding the tension at home. I felt alone, surrounded by his family's memories and my growing resentment. Ella, why are you still working at that clinic? You should focus on helping here, with the family business, Nancy said one night as we cleared the dinner table. Nancy, I like my job. It's important to me, I responded, the fatigue and frustration making my voice sharper than I intended. She sighed, a long, drawn-out sound of disappointment. I just don't see why you'd choose that over family. Lying in bed that night, listening to Tom's uneven breaths, I wondered how long we could keep this up. How long before the weight of his mother's expectations crushed the life we wanted to build together? My job at the clinic was on the other side of the city, which meant my days started in the dark and ended in it too. The commute was a beast, eating up hours I didn't have, and every trip felt longer than the last. Coming home was no relief. Nancy had a sharp eye for anything done less than perfect. I'd barely stepped through the door before the critique started. Ella, you've left streaks on the window again. Do it over. She'd snap, barely looking up from her knitting. And this soup is bland. Didn't I show you how to season it? she'd add at dinner, making a face as if she'd tasted something sour. I tried, really tried, to brush it off and keep the peace, but it wore me down. Even Tom, my supposed partner in all this, started echoing his mom. "Ella, Mom's right. You could be a bit more careful with the cleaning, and the cooking," he'd say, not meeting my eyes. It stung, hearing that from him, like I was failing some test I didn't sign up for. Our home felt less like ours, and more like I was an unwelcome guest who couldn't do anything right. One day, after a particularly rough shift at the clinic where I'd stayed late to cover for a coworker, earning me a small bonus, I came home with an idea. I was dead on my feet, but excited to share it with Tom. "Babe, I got a little bonus at work today. We've both been under so much stress. Why don't we take a short vacation? Just a few days. We deserve a break," I suggested, hoping for a moment of connection. Tom looked up from the bills he was sorting, his face unreadable. "That sounds great, babe, but I can't just leave the laundry. Mom can't handle it alone." "It's just a few days, Tom. She can manage, or we could call in some temporary help." I pushed back, needing something to feel normal again. Before Tom could reply, Nancy walked into the room, having caught the tail end of our conversation. Her face was set in a hard line. "A vacation? And leave me to deal with everything here? You think I'm just your backup plan, Ella? That's heartless, even cruel," Nancy snapped, her voice cold. "I'm not your servant, ready to pick up slack so you can frolic on the beach. I'm not made of steel." Tom's gaze followed her, and then he looked at me, his expression tight. "Mom's got a point, Ella. You can be a bit insensitive. Maybe now's not the time for a vacation." That hurt more than Nancy's words. My own husband, who should have had my back, sided with her over a simple, well-deserved break. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, a cocktail of emotions that left me more exhausted. So, my vacation days rolled around, and instead of lying on a beach somewhere, sipping something tropical, I was stuck at home. I spent those days mostly alone, with Tom at the laundry and Nancy giving me the cold shoulder. I'd escape to the city beach when I could, soaking up some sun and pretending things were different. Splitting my time between the clinic and the laundry wasn't my dream scenario, but after months of nonstop nagging from Nancy and Tom about not pitching in, I caved. "Fine, I'll help out at the laundry, but only part-time. I'm not giving up my job at the clinic," I told Tom, setting my terms. He seemed relieved, almost happy, but then he dropped another bomb. "That's great, babe, but I won't be able to pay you a salary. We'll just give you access to the family account, keep things simple and tax-free." I was too tired to argue. "Sure, whatever works," I muttered, not fully processing yet another sign that I was sinking deeper into their world, my own desires drifting away. The transition was rough. Mornings at the clinic were hectic, and afternoons at the laundry were a crash course in a business I had zero interest in. Still, I learned the ropes, got to know the regular customers, and even started seeing ways we could do things better. A few months in, I gathered enough courage to bring up my ideas at dinner. "Tom, Nancy, I've been thinking about how we could bring in more customers. Maybe we could offer loyalty discounts, or even host a weekly express service day?" Tom barely looked up from his plate. "Ella, I appreciate you trying to help, but I've been in this business since I was a kid. I know what works." I bit my lip, frustration bubbling. "It's just an idea. And there's also a room next door that just freed up. We could expand, offer more services." Nancy laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. "Trying to take over now? Think you can run things better than us?" "Don't make me laugh." I retreated, feeling smaller with each word. It was clear they didn't value my input, only my compliance. But I couldn't let it go. The laundry was struggling, and it pained me to watch something tied so closely to Tom fail because of stubbornness. One afternoon, as I folded clothes in the back, I overheard Tom arguing with a supplier on the phone. "No, I can't meet that order. We're not pulling enough profit this quarter," he said, frustration evident in his tone. I waited for him to hang up, then approached cautiously. Tom, if we're struggling with profits, why not reconsider some of my suggestions? They could really help. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. Ella, I said no. This is how we've always done it. It's not about new ideas, it's about tradition, about keeping things the way my dad ran them. I stepped back, realizing this battle was lost before it even began. Day by day, I watched the laundry's profits dip, our arguments become more frequent, and the distance between us grow. It was my birthday, a day I hoped would be a small bright spot in the dreary grind of the past months. I left a note for Tom on the kitchen table early in the morning, telling him I'd be out until noon. I wanted some time for myself, to just breathe and maybe feel a bit special. I spent the morning downtown, picking out a beautiful new dress and then treating myself to a full makeover at the beauty salon, hair, nails, the works. It felt indulgent, spending money and time on myself like that, but it was my day, and I was determined to enjoy it. However, the moment I stepped back into the house, bags in hand and feeling lighter than I had in weeks, the atmosphere shifted. I was met with a storm. Where the hell have you been? Tom barked the second I closed the door. Next to him, Nancy stood with her arms crossed, her expression thunderous. I left a note, I stammered, confused by their anger. I was out for my birthday, remember? Birthday? Tom scoffed, and Nancy snorted. A lot of good that does us. You left the laundry unattended, and there was no breakfast prepared. You think today's somehow different? Nancy accused, stepping closer. Her voice was sharp, each word a knife. Stunned, I felt my heart sink. But it's just one morning. One morning out of the entire year, I said, my voice barely a whisper now, hurt flashing through me. Nancy's lips curled in disdain. I don't care about your birthday. You're just lazy and stupid, thinking only about yourself. You don't even do a good job as a housekeeper. I looked to Tom, searching his face for any sign of support, any hint of the man I'd married. Tom, you don't believe that, do you? Tell me you don't agree with her. He met my gaze, his eyes cold and distant. She's right, Ella. Maybe you don't fit in here after all. I don't need this chaos. That was it. The last straw. My whole body trembled with the force of my decision. I want a divorce, Tom. Nancy clapped her hands, her voice rising in excitement. Finally, we'll be rid of you, you stupid, arrogant freeloader. And you'll pay us back for letting you live here for 3 years. We've wasted enough on you. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the tense air. Oh, I'll pay you? Funny, I was thinking you owe me for all the unpaid labor. For every holiday, every sick day I never took. That's what you'll be paying me. Nancy's face fell, her mouth snapping shut. I didn't wait for another word. I marched upstairs, pulled out my suitcases, and started packing. Clothes, a few personal items, anything I could call mine. Within an hour, I was ready. Suitcase in hand, I walked out of that house. I didn't look back, not at the home I had tried to make mine, not at the life I thought I wanted. I moved into a small rented apartment, a place that was mine alone, no judgments, no snide remarks, just quiet and peace. For the first couple of days, I wallowed in my grief. But as I sat there in the silence of my new space, something shifted inside me. I was done crying. It was time to show them they were wrong, to prove that I could stand on my own. Fired up, I filed for divorce, laying out my case for the unpaid labor and the emotional turmoil they'd put me through. I also took a 3-month unpaid leave from the clinic. I needed this time, not just to heal but to set up my own venture, something that would hit Tom and Nancy where it hurt, their business. I remembered the vacant room next to their laundry, the same one I had suggested they expand into. It was a stroke of irony, or maybe fate, that it was still empty. With my savings, I signed the lease. The place was a mess, but I saw its potential. The renovations were tough, and every decision from paint colors to plumbing fixtures felt monumental. But I poured my heart into every detail. This has to be perfect, I told the contractor, pointing out exactly where I wanted the new washers and dryers. Top of the line, everything. Once the place was shaped up, I moved on to the supplies and equipment, choosing only the best. Safety and quality were my top priorities. I installed video surveillance and high security locks, ensuring that my customers would never have to worry about their belongings. With the logistics in place, I focused on the customer experience. I set up a small coffee machine offering free coffee, created a cozy corner for kids, and even installed a couple of slot machines to keep clients entertained while they waited. Every detail was designed to make my laundry not just a necessity, but a pleasant part of my customers' day. Opening day was a mix of nerves and excitement. People were curious, of course. Some came in just to see the new place, others out of loyalty to Tom and Nancy. But once they experienced the difference, word started to spread. I made it a point to meet every client, to ask about their day, to ensure they were satisfied with our service. Thanks for choosing us, I'd say with a smile. Let us know if there's anything else we can do for you. Slowly, word started spreading. Positive reviews popped up online, praising the clean facilities, friendly service, and innovative touches. More and more people began choosing my laundry over Tom's. One busy afternoon, as I refilled the coffee machine, a regular customer, Mrs. Henderson, approached me. "Ella, dear, I must say, your place is a breath of fresh air. I told all my friends about it." I smiled, handing her a cup. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. That means a lot to me. I'm glad you enjoy coming here." The popularity of my laundry grew, and with it, so did my confidence. I had created something out of nothing, turned pain into success. The satisfaction wasn't just in the profits or the praise, it was in proving that I could thrive, that I could make something better, all on my own. It was a busy Tuesday afternoon when they walked in, Nancy and Tom, looking like a storm brewing on the horizon. I was behind the counter, sorting through orders, but I straightened up the moment I saw them. My heart skipped, not out of fear, but readiness. I had prepared for this moment, although I hoped it would never come. Nancy wasted no time, her voice loud enough to turn heads. "You've ruined us, Ella. Stolen our customers with your underhanded tactics." Tom stood behind her, his expression hard to read. He looked tired, older than I remembered. "I haven't stolen anything. People choose where they want to go. I just provided a better option," I responded, my hand subtly pressing the button under the counter that alerted my security team. "This is all low, even for you," Nancy continued, her finger jabbing in the air towards me. "Making us bankrupt, you think you're clever?" I sighed, shaking my head. "I think I'm fair. I offered ideas, remember? You both pushed me out, laughed at my suggestions. I built this from scratch, honestly, and with hard work." Tom finally spoke, his voice quiet. "Ella, this isn't what we..." "Tom, look around you. I've made this place what it is, because I listened, I adapted, and I cared. Not only about profits, but about people." Nancy's face was red, her anger palpable. "You think you're better than us, that you can just replace us?" "No, Nancy. I just chose not to settle for mediocrity," I replied, pulling up reviews on my phone and pushing it across the counter towards them. "Read these. Customers didn't leave because of me. They left because of dirty rooms, rude service, and poor quality. They left because you refused to change." She glanced at the screen, then looked away, her mouth tightening. "And now," she hissed, turning her wrath back to Tom, "you've let her destroy everything your father built." Tom's face crumpled, and for a moment, I felt a pang of old affection, quickly smothered by years of strain. Nancy turned back to me, desperation in her voice. "Give him a job, then. Take him on here. We're drowning in debt. We're going to close down." I looked at Tom, seeing the man I once loved, the man who sided with his mother against me when I needed him most. "I'm sorry, Tom. I'm running a business, not a charity. Please leave my property, or I will have to call the police." They left, Nancy muttering under her breath, Tom silent. Watching them go, I felt a chapter close, one filled with hard lessons and tougher resolutions. Since then, my laundry continued to thrive. Word of mouth and positive online reviews kept new customers coming. I eventually decided to leave the clinic altogether, pouring my heart